There once lived a fisherman named Kofi, who resided in a small coastal village called Badu with his family. Life had always been hard for Kofi. His days began before the sun rose and ended long after the stars dotted the sky. The sea was his home, his source of hope and livelihood, yet also the root of his constant struggles. Despite the long hours he spent casting nets, fighting waves, and scouring the waters for fish, his catch was often modest and barely enough to sustain his family. And lately the sea had grown even less generous. The fish were elusive and the tides were unpredictable. But one thing Kofi knew for sure is that you will subscribe to Tales of Africa if you haven't already. Yeah, come on, cheer him up with some likes. By the way, what do you think he should do with his so-called wife? Ready? Kofi's wife Abena was a woman of beauty and pride. They had married years ago when Kofi was younger and thought his luck would never run out. But as time passed, Abena's ambitions proved different from the life they now led. Abena preferred to spend her days socializing in the village square, admiring new clothes, and dreaming of a life far beyond the shores of Badu. She would complain about their modest lifestyle, the simple mud and thatch house, and the meals of salted fish and cassava that made up their daily fare. Though Kofi never begrudged her dreams, it pained him that she was reluctant to share the burden of their struggles. Their two children, Kwame and Esi, were much more helpful to Kofi than Abena ever was. At 14, Kwame was a mirror of his father. A strong young man, with an untamed spirit and the resilience of one who had seen hardship. Esi, only 2 years younger, was filled with energy, quick-witted, and had a determination that even many adults in the village admired. Together, the siblings would often help their father with mending nets, collecting bait, and even going out on the water to fish when the tides were calm. It was as if they had inherited Kofi's resolve to make the best of their situation. One morning, as Kofi prepared to leave for the sea, Kwame approached him with a suggestion. "Papa, why don't we take the boat out farther today? Maybe deeper waters will bring better luck," Kwame proposed, his eyes bright with hope. Kofi hesitated. The deeper waters were unpredictable and filled with risks, but they had fished the near shores until they were barren, and he knew he needed to do something to bring home a larger catch. Reluctantly, Kofi nodded. "All right, my son, but we must be careful," Kofi said. That day, Kwame and Esi prepared to join their father on a longer journey into the unknown. Abena, however, only grumbled as they left. "Why do you insist on these dangerous ventures? What if the sea takes you?" she complained, but her concern seemed less about losing her family and more about the inconvenience it would cause her. The journey out to sea was long and grueling. The sun beat down on them, and the wind grew sharp as they pushed the boat farther than they had ever gone before. When they finally reached deeper waters, Kofi cast his nets into the blue abyss, hoping the new fishing ground would reward their bravery. They waited, their boat rocking in the rhythmic sway of the waves. For hours they saw nothing. The nets remained empty, dragging lifelessly in the water. It wasn't until late afternoon that their patience was rewarded. Suddenly, the nets became heavy with movement. Kwame and Esi's eyes lit up with excitement as they helped their father pull in the nets. With all their strength, they hauled the catch aboard fish of all shapes and sizes, flapping wildly as the sun gleamed off their silver scales. It was a miracle. This was the kind of catch that could feed them for weeks and even earn them enough money to pay off their mounting debts. As they made their way back to the village, hope blossomed in their hearts. But when they arrived ashore, their joy was short-lived. Abena was nowhere to be seen. She had gone to visit a neighboring village, leaving the household a mess. It was as if she had forgotten they were a family that needed to work together to survive. Kofi tried to ignore his frustration as he and the children set about cleaning and preparing the fish for market the next day. They stayed up late, slicing, salting, and drying the fish until their hands ached. The next morning, Kofi and Kwame took their catch to the village market, and as hoped, the villagers flocked to buy their fresh and abundant haul. The money they earned that day was the most they had seen in months, and Kofi's spirits lifted. He imagined the things they could now afford: new fishing equipment, clothes for Kwame and Esi, and food beyond their usual staple meals. But when they returned home to share the news, Abena's reaction was far from grateful. "All this work just for a few coins," she scoffed. "We should be living better than this by now. What am I supposed to do with this money when it won't buy me anything that I deserve?" Her words cut Kofi like a knife. Despite the children's help and the small successes they were beginning to achieve, Abena's discontent was like a storm cloud that darkened their home. And no matter how much Kofi tried to reason with her, she only grew more withdrawn, more resentful. As the weeks went on, Abena's neglect of the family responsibilities became more apparent. She rarely cooked, leaving Kwame and Esi to fend for themselves. She wouldn't help mend the fishing nets or care for their small garden, and she frequently left for days at a time to visit relatives or attend events in neighboring villages. Kofi's love for her remained, but it was weighed down by the ever-growing burden of holding the family together alone. One night, as Kofi sat by the fire, patching up a torn fishing net, Kwame approached him with a serious look on his face. "Papa, why does Mama never help us?" he asked, his voice tinged with frustration. Esi, who was listening from the corner of the room, also looked up with questioning eyes. Kofi sighed heavily, feeling the weight of 1,000 unspoken words on his shoulders. He wanted to protect his children from the harsh reality of their mother's indifference, but the truth was, they already felt it. They saw it every day in her absence and in her careless words. "Your mother, she has dreams that we may never understand," Kofi finally said, trying to soften the truth. "But we must continue to work hard. Together, we will find a way." Kwame, mature beyond his years, nodded solemnly, but Esi, less willing to forgive, muttered under her breath, "I don't understand why she even stays with us if she doesn't want to be here." The tension in the family grew like a festering wound. Even though Kofi and the children continued to have success at sea, bringing in more fish and earning more money, Abena's discontent only seemed to worsen. She would complain about the smells of fish that permeated their home, the rough hands that Kofi bore from hours at sea, and the village life that she so deeply despised. One fateful day, as Kofi and the children were returning from an exceptionally prosperous fishing trip, they found Abena packing her belongings. "I'm leaving," she said coldly, not looking up from her bundle. "I can't live like this anymore. This is not the life I was meant to have." Kofi stood frozen, his heart pounding. The children stared, their faces a mix of shock and anger. "Where will you go?" Kofi asked quietly, though deep down he knew the answer didn't matter. Abena didn't reply. She only gathered her things and left without so much as a goodbye. In the days that followed, the silence in the house was deafening. Kofi tried to fill the void with his work and his love for his children, and Kwame and Esi took on more responsibility than ever before. They were a family of 3 now, and they would do whatever it took to make ends meet. But just when Kofi thought their greatest challenge was behind them, the sea turned on him. The calm waters that had brought them so much fortune suddenly became rough and treacherous. Storms would blow in without warning, and the fish seemed to vanish once more. Day after day, Kofi and the children would return home empty-handed, their faces streaked with salt water and despair. One stormy afternoon, Kofi made the decision that would change their lives. They would take the boat out to the farthest point they had ever ventured, a place so deep and mysterious it was said to be where the sea spirits dwelled. It was a dangerous choice, but Kofi knew it was their last hope. The journey was brutal. Waves crashed over the sides of the boat, and the winds howled like spirits in mourning. But Kofi, Kwame, and Esi fought against the storm with all their strength, holding on to each other as they braved the fury of the sea. And just as they reached the point of no return, the sea stilled. In the eerie calm, Kofi cast his net one final time. They waited in silence, the tension heavy in the air. And then it happened. The nets filled to the brim, pulling the boat down with their weight. Kwame and Esi grabbed the ropes, and together they hauled in the largest catch they had ever seen. It was as if the sea, in its infinite mystery, had rewarded their bravery and struggle. When they returned to the village, weary and soaked, the villagers gathered around, cheering their miraculous catch. Kofi looked at his children, their faces shining with pride, and knew that whatever struggles lay ahead, they would face them together. From that day on, Kofi, Kwame, and Esi became known as the family who faced the sea and won. They rebuilt their lives, stronger than before, and though the memory of Abena's abandonment stung, they found peace in each other's love and in the strength they shared as a family, and so they continued to fish, to live, and to thrive together. Thank you so much for watching our videos on Tales of Africa. Your support and time mean the world to us. We hope you enjoyed the stories and found them as captivating and inspiring as we do. Please continue to watch, share, and let us know what you think. We're excited to bring you more tales from the heart of Africa. Thank you for being a part of our storytelling community.